In early 2025, construction workers in Berlin were restoring a crumbling apartment block, the kind built before the war, long forgotten. But behind a false wall in one of the upper units, they stumbled across something far from ordinary. A sealed metal box, airtight, untouched by time. Inside, a single yellowed envelope, handwritten in neat German script, dated late 2012, signed Roches Misch. The man who once stood just feet from Adolf Hitler, his bodyguard, his telephone operator, the last living witness to the final days of the Nazi regime. For decades, Misch insisted he knew nothing of the Holocaust, nothing of Hitler's crimes. He was just a soldier, he claimed, just a bystander. But this letter, this confession, told a horrifyingly different story. Roches Misch wasn't a war criminal. He wasn't a general or a policymaker. He didn't command armies or plan invasions. But he was there. He was always there. Born in 1917 in Silesia, then part of the German Empire, Misch was orphaned young and raised by his grandparents. Like so many German youths in the 1930s, he was swept up by nationalism and economic desperation. In 1937, at just 20 years old, he joined the SS, not out of ideology, he claimed, but for a stable job. Within a year, he was selected for the Leibstandard SS Adolf Hitler, the Führer's elite personal bodyguard unit. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were handpicked, conditioned, and trained to serve Hitler without question. And from that moment on, Roches Misch's life was tied to one man, Adolf Hitler. By 1940, Misch was no longer just standing guard. He had become Hitler's communications officer, responsible for relaying sensitive military orders, manning the private phone lines, and managing encrypted radio messages. He served at every major Nazi headquarters, the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, the Berghof in the Bavarian Alps, the Wolfslair on the Eastern Front. He was in the room when critical orders were dispatched. He sat outside strategy meetings that would change the course of history. He saw the comings and goings of Himmler, Goebbels, Goering, Speer, the architects of genocide and war. And in July 1944, he was just feet away from Hitler when Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg's bomb nearly succeeded in killing the dictator. Misch survived that explosion. He survived it all, but what he couldn't escape was the bunker. In April 1945, Berlin was falling. Soviet artillery thundered closer every hour. The Third Reich was in its death throes. As Hitler retreated into the Führer bunker, a subterranean tomb beneath the Reich Chancellery, Misch followed, unaware that he was walking into history's most infamous suicide bunker. He maintained the phones as chaos reigned above. He watched Hitler unravel, issuing delusional orders, blaming betrayal for Germany's collapse, not defeat. The air grew stale. Morale crumbled. Paranoia consumed the bunker like a virus. On April 30th, 1945, it ended. Eva Braun swallowed cyanide. Adolf Hitler, according to most accounts, shot himself in the head. Misch was just a few rooms away. He saw the bodies wrapped in blankets. He saw them carried up the stairs. He watched them burn in the garden as gasoline-soaked corpses turned to ash, just as Hitler had instructed, to avoid Soviet humiliation. 3 more days he stayed underground. Then finally he fled, right into Soviet hands. The Soviets knew exactly who they had, a man who had seen Hitler behind closed doors, who had overheard his final conversations, who might carry secrets no one else could confirm. For the next 9 years, Roches Misch was imprisoned across Soviet labor camps and interrogation centers. Harsh winters, forced labor, exhaustive questioning. What did Hitler say? What did he do? Did he talk about the Jews, the camps, the extermination? Misch denied everything. "I was just a telephone operator," he said. And when he was released in 1954, he returned to West Berlin a free man, but one who kept his mouth shut. For decades, he lived quietly. He ran a small shop. He stayed in the same neighborhood he'd grown up in. No interviews, no memoirs, no spotlight. Not until much later. In the early 2000s, Misch broke his silence. He appeared in documentaries, sat for interviews, and eventually published a memoir titled The Last Witness. But instead of remorse, Misch offered nostalgia. "Hitler was a wonderful boss," he once said. "We were with him day and night. We were close. But politics? That wasn't my concern." When pressed about the Holocaust, Misch said bluntly, "That was never a topic. Never." He claimed he knew about Dachau, the first concentration camp, but nothing more. He said he had no idea of the scale, no idea what the Nazis were really doing. To many, he seemed like an old man stuck in denial. To others, a coward avoiding responsibility. But in 2025, 12 years after his death, the world finally learned the truth. That hidden envelope, found inside a sealed metal box in Mish's former apartment, contained a single letter. It began with one chilling sentence: "I can't keep silent anymore." Inside, Mish confessed what he had never said aloud. Not to journalists, not to his interrogators, not even in his own memoir. He had seen everything. He described prisoners, suspected traitors, buried alive in the woods. No trial, no mercy, just silence and dirt. Hitler, he wrote, sometimes watched from behind glass and smiled. He said, "Justice sleeps best underground." Mish also wrote of poison experiments, cruel, calculated tests on human beings, conducted in underground facilities, timed with stopwatches, repeated for data. He claimed Hitler not only ordered them, but personally took notes. But perhaps the most disturbing part of the letter was the story of a child. A young girl allegedly gifted to Hitler by a high-ranking officer. Within days, she was found dead in the woods near the Berghof. Officially, it was an enemy ambush, but Mish always suspected otherwise. He believed Hitler ordered her killed, a cover-up, erased from SS records. One more horror buried in the dirt. Throughout the letter, Mish described being haunted. "I see their faces at night," he wrote. "I hear their voices under the ground." He confessed that for decades he convinced himself he was just a guard, a bystander, a pair of ears behind the phones. But the older he got, the harder that lie became to live with. "I lied to protect myself," he wrote. "But silence is a form of guilt. Let the truth now be known, even if it comes too late." Experts believe the letter was deliberately hidden, sealed in an airtight box, buried behind insulation, designed to remain hidden until long after Mish was gone. He never wanted to face the world's judgment. But in the end, he couldn't leave without telling it. As news of the letter spread, the historical community erupted. Federal and state archivists began the process of authenticating the document, matching handwriting, ink composition, paper fibers. Translation teams worked to produce exact transcripts. Some experts have confirmed privately, the details are too specific, too accurate. He knew things no outsider could have. Still, controversy brews. Some historians warn against hasty conclusions. Others question whether the workers who found the letter were motivated by publicity or money. But the construction team has denied everything. They say they handed it to authorities immediately. Meanwhile, Holocaust educators and survivors are calling for transparency. They believe this letter may unlock new insight, not just into Hitler's final days, but into missing victims, hidden locations, and the true psychology of Nazi leadership. And they're right, because this letter doesn't just rewrite one man's story, it forces us to confront the question, how many other truths have we buried? How many witnesses stayed silent? Rokas Mish died in 2013 at the age of 96. No public apology, no admission of guilt, just a quiet funeral and a legacy shaped by omission. But with one letter left behind in a wall, he may have finally done what he could never do in life. Tell the truth, whether out of guilt or fear or a final need for peace. Mish's last words now speak louder than his years of silence. And maybe, just maybe, the man who spent a lifetime guarding history's darkest secret has finally given us a glimpse of the truth. Too late for justice, but not too late to remember. What do you think about the letter Rokas Mish left behind? Let us know in the comments. And remember, some truths refuse to stay buried. Thanks for watching.